Hello everyone, a very warm welcome to you on Unacademy. I'm Prashasti Arora और आज हम एक बहुत ही important topic के बारे में बात करने वाले हैं, which is public sector banks. Of course, this comes under General Studies Paper 3 और जैसा कि हम जानते हैं कि गवर्नमेंट हैज़ कंसिडर्ड टाइम एंड अगेन अबाउट द प्राइवेटाइजेशन ऑफ पब्लिक सेक्टर बैंक्स डिस्पाइट कि अभी हम बहुत क्लियरली चीज़ें नहीं समझ पाते हैं रिगार्डिंग दिस पर्टिकुलर प्राइवेटाइजेशन बट वी कैन अंडरस्टैंड व्हाट एग्जैक्टली आर द चैलेंजेस व्हाट एग्जैक्टली इज how exactly is privatization going to pan out for the public sector banks and this is under concepts of Indian economy. हम इसमें particular topic कर रहे हैं public sector banks. I have covered a lot of other topics as well. I have covered फॉर एग्जाम्पल इससे पहले मैंने कवर किया है द स्ट्रक्चर द बैंकिंग स्ट्रक्चर देन आई ऑल्सो कवर्ड द रिजर्व बैंक ऑफ इंडिया एंड बेसिकली द रिफॉर्म्स इन द बैंकिंग सेक्टर. प्रीतम वेरी वेरी वार्म गुड इवनिंग टू यू. आई होप यू आर हैविंग अ गुड डे. यस, सो आई वाज सेइंग कि पूरा जो सीरीज है उसमें मैंने काफ़ी ज़्यादा चीज़ें कवर की हुई हैं. फॉर एग्जाम्पल स्ट्रक्चर ऑफ द इंडियन बैंकिंग सिस्टम, वी हैव कवर्ड scheduled banks, commercial scheduled banks, priority sector lending, Basel norms, वो सारा भी मैंने कवर किया हुआ है. तो अगर आप ये मेरा पूरा सीरीज कवर कर लेंगे यू विल गेट अ गुड ग्रास्प ऑन द कॉन्सेप्ट्स ऑफ इंडियन इकोनॉमी. ठीक है, अब बात करते हैं पब्लिक सेक्टर बैंक्स की, बट उससे पहले जो 8 फरवरी को बैचेस स्टार्ट होने वाले थे 2021, 2022 एंड 2023 के. प्लीज डू इनरोल फॉर इट राइट अवे सो दैट यू गेट ऑल द बेनिफिट्स. ऑल्सो डू सब्सक्राइब टू माई टेलीग्राम चैनल इफ यू नॉट डन इट ऑलरेडी एंड यू कैन फॉलो मी ऑन माई अनअकैडमी प्रोफाइल ताकि आप मेरे जो दूसरे लेक्चर्स हैं वो देख सकते हैं. राकेश कुमार, अ वेरी वेरी वार्म गुड इवनिंग टू यू एज वेल. ओके, सो लेट्स स्टार्ट द सेशन. ऑल द वेरी बेस्ट. लेट मी know if you have any doubt and I hope your preparations are going on track. Let's start. Okay, first thing that we have to understand, the first main thing that we have to understand regarding the privatization of the public sector banks. Now, of course, ये जो हिंट था प्राइवेटाइजेशन का, इट इज अंडर द न्यू प्राइवेटाइजेशन पॉलिसी, राइट. इनफैक्ट द यूनियन गवर्नमेंट had stated that it is considering to designate the banking sector as a strategic sector under the new privatization policy. Now remember that ये जो privatization policy है, what will it essentially do? It will try to ensure that not more than 4 state owned companies will exist. अब हम समझेंगे कि इसके repercussions क्या होंगे, what will be the challenges and what is the way forward for a sector like the public sector banks if it gets completely privatized in nature. In fact, after the latest round of consolidation, there are 12 public sector banks. How many public sector banks after the consolidation? There are 12 public sector banks. Now what does this essentially mean? This means that having 4 mega public sector banks will either come through from further mergers of PSUs or privatization, right? And अगर ये privatization के through होता है, it will often be considered as a solution for poor management in public sector banks. See, everyone knows that public sector banks जो हैं उसमें काफ़ी issues हैं. For example, there's a problem of excessive manpower. They have issues of excessive manpower. Then there is aging workforce. Then there is adopted technology which is not very very successful, which is why the ability to undertake a large scale infrastructure, then risk management, mitigation capabilities for the banking sector is still very very bleaky, very very dark in nature, which is why it's important to understand कि अगर privatization हो जाती है तो what will happen for the public sector banks, right? Now why is government and now why is the government thinking that it's high time that privatization takes place? सबसे पहली चीज जो आपको समझनी है, that is basically the dual control है ना. dual control का क्या मतलब है? dual control का मतलब है जो PSUs है, they are duly controlled by the Reserve Bank of India under the RBI Act 1934 and the Finance Ministry. ठीक है, तो हमेशा याद रखिएगा PSUs are controlled dually under the RBI Act 1934 and the Finance Ministry under the Banking Regulation Act. Please ये acts को हम बहुत ध्यान से पढ़िएगा because यहाँ confusion हो सकता है, right? So the Finance Ministry वाला is under the Banking Regulation Act 1949. If anyone has any doubt, please let me know. Dave, a very warm good evening to you. Please let me know if you have any doubt regarding the topics that I'm teaching right now. Why exactly is government trying to privatize the public sector banks? Now the rationale behind this is that there is a dual control which actually leads to problems in the functioning of the public sector banks, right? And in fact there is a problem of bulk of non-performing assets, right? Now as we know, and because of this issue, a lot of other issues have also cropped up in the banking sector, right? The problem is that there is the system is overburdened with the non-performing assets, and the majority of which it lies in the public sector banks, right? Now of course these are the two major reasons why there is a push towards there is a inclination towards the privatization of PSUs. Now of course there are other issues like it is not autonomous, there is lack of autonomy. Public sector banks jo hai, they are not adequately professionalized, and the government is still it decides the boards appointments. There are other things are also decided by the government, and which is why they don't have enough autonomy to function, and that really hampers the entire process. Then of course there is a problem of difference of incentives. Now what exactly does this mean? Basically private and public sector banks jo hai, they have different incentives. Now of course we know that if a public bank is incentivized properly, then of course there will be better reforms. But because of the fact that there is a difference of incentives in both the public and the private sector, there is there is a problem in the way public sector banks function. Did you all understand the entire concept of how why exactly does the entire concept of the rationale behind privatization of the public sector banks, right? Of course it is yet to be tested as to how it will pan out, but of course with the due course of time that will only be seen. Now talking about the issues, now what are the issues that are related to privatization? Now first thing that we have to remember is that there is issue of governance. The key issue of the Indian banking is there is a lack of adequate governance जो stretch करता है across public and private ownership, right? And because of that for example in the case of public sector banks बहुत ज़्यादा political interference है, और उस political interference की वजह से जो private banks हैं they are prone to a lot of malpractices, है ना? जो malpractices in the wake of serving the interest of its promoters. So क्या होता है, because दोनों में ही issue है. In case of PSUs there is a lot of political interference which hampers the entire functioning of the banking sector. And talking about the policy issue, now if you talk about the policy issue, now of course restructuring schemes such as corporate debt restructuring, then there is schemes for sustainable structuring and which is initiated by Reserve Bank of India, are the major reasons as to why there is delay in the recognition of bad loans, है ना? Because of these schemes ये जो recognition of bad loans होते हैं वो late हो जाते हैं, और इसकी वजह से काफी ज्यादा जो policy, so I'll tell you प्रॉब्लम ये है, सबसे बड़ी प्रॉब्लम ये है कि यहाँ स्ट्रक्चरल इश्यूज हैं, और इन स्ट्रक्चरल इश्यूज की वजह से जो पब्लिक सेक्टर बैंक्स हैं वो अच्छे से फंक्शन नहीं कर पा रहे हैं, एंड वन ऑफ देम बीइंग द पॉलिसी इशू, राइट? देन ऑफ कोर्स टॉकिंग अबाउट द रेगुलेशन फेलियर. नाउ इन फैक्ट रेगुलेशन फेलियर में अगर हमें एक चीज समझनी है वो है दैट एज आरबीआई डज नॉट हैव द सिमिलर कंट्रोल ओवर पीएसयूज एज it has with respect to private banks. What happens is that this does not this explains as to why RBI cannot hold the PSUs accountable for issues such as capital adequacy. मैंने इससे पहले capital adequacy के बारे में पूरा समझाया. Capital adequacy, the Basel norms and what norms India complies to and which banks are complying to what norms, है ना. तो आप मेरा वो सेशन जरूर देखिएगा, ठीक है. मैं एक बार ये कमेंट सेक्शन में भी वो सेशन का लिंक डाल दूंगी so that you आपको पूरा synchrony में सब समझ आ जाए, right. So there are a lot of problems because RBI नहीं control कर पाता है problems like capital adequacy, fraud control, reporting reporting of financial assessments. क्या होता है कि RBI because ये नहीं control कर पाता है, there is a lot of failure in the regulations of the public sector banks, right. So ये issue है. These are the issues with privatization. अगर privatization हो गई तो और बुरा हाल हो जाएगा, right. Then but one thing that we have to note here is that RBI is well equipped. मतलब RBI के पास वो wherewithal है कि वो regulate कर पाए banks को under the Reserve Bank of India Act 1934, right. So this one thing that we have to note here. अब चौथी problem जो है, सबसे बड़ी problem as far as my opinion is concerned, is that the issue of public sector banks for development. We know कि हमने पहले भी पढ़ा है कि public sector banks एक बहुत important role play करते हैं, for welfare policies like financial inclusion, farm loan waivers, right. All of this, PSUs really do, ensure that it is functioning well. And अगर क्या होता है, अगर ये privatize हो जाते हैं तो पूरा जो main motive हो जाएगा, the onus will lie on profit rather than anything else, and that will really hamper the entire banking system. Now see, the thing is कि banking जो system है, it is the fulcrum of an economy, right. Banking is actually the fulcrum of the economy, and it of course has its own strengths, and of course economics that achieve a rapid growth will play a major role in the facilitation of this particular thing. So it's important that जो भी step लिया जाता है towards privatization it is well thought through. In fact, RBI governor, former governor Raghuram Rajan ने इस particular privatization का जो ये even like the idea of it, he really criticized it, and he said that it is really going to be detrimental, and the repercussions are going to be really, really impactful in the long run, right. So this was about the public sector banks. We talked about the challenges that is related to the privatization. We talked about the rationale behind why privatization is being thought through, and we talked about what exactly are public sector banks and how do they contribute in the economy, right. So if you talk a little about the way forward regarding the public sector banks, then I think it's basically, it will be improving the whole, structural system, and of course improving governance in that regard. Then of course, giving banks the adequate autonomy that they require. In fact, the P.K. Nayak committee hai, it talked about, in order to improve the governance and management of PSUs, there needs to be a implementation and recommendation of the P.J. Nayak committee. So, agar aapko aisa koi question aata hai ki P.J. Nayak committee is related to what, now you know it is related to the banking, to the PSU, privatization of PSUs. Then, of course, de-risking reforms, de-risking banks is also one way forward to this. The banks need to follow norms for lending of, lending, and in fact, non-performing assets can be tackled through the establishment of a bad bank, and of course, and there needs to be speedy resolution of the NPAs through the insolvency bankruptcy code, right. So these are some of the ways forward. In fact, जब आप आंसर लिख रहे होंगे अपना especially मेंस का आंसर, तो ये पॉइंट्स जो हैं आपको हैंडी मिलेंगे, and these points will help you fine tune your answers better, right. So this was the way forward, this was the challenges, this was why exactly there needs to be privatization and the public sector banks in a nutshell, right. So this was about the session. Anyone has any doubt? Is there anything that anyone wants me to clarify? or is it absolutely clear? Tomorrow we will discuss financial inclusion, and we will discuss everything about financial inclusion. Of course, आज के टाइम में प्रीलिम्स और मेंस के रिगार्डिंग ये दोनों ही टॉपिक, ये सारे ही इकोनॉमी के टॉपिक्स, एग्रीकल्चर के टॉपिक्स, स्पेशली प्रायोरिटी सेक्टर लेंडिंग पर मैंने बहुत अच्छे से फोकस किया था, बिकॉज आई नो कि यूपीएससी बहुत ही अनप्रिडिक्टेबल है और एक एक टॉपिक आप लोगों को बहुत अच्छे से करके जाना है. कल हम करेंगे फाइनेंशियल इंक्लूजन, एंड उसके बाद वील टॉक अबाउट द बेनिफिट्स ऑफ फाइनेंशियल इंक्लूजन. देन वी विल गो ahead and do small finance bank, then we'll do the in payments bank, we'll do other banking related initiatives that is important for all of us to know. We'll do gold investment schemes, right? So these are the things that we will cover in this session. Amit, a very warm good evening to you. Is there any doubt in this small crisp session on public sector banks? Does anyone want me to clarify anything, or I will meet you all at 10 o'clock on the Unacademy platform? Is there anything that anyone wants me to clarify, or can I wrap up this session? Anyone? Chalo, I hope you have a great evening ahead. All the very best. I will see you all at 10 o'clock on the Unacademy platform, where we will do a lot of MCQs. I'll do a marathon on like about 45-50 MCQs. So please do join me there. All the very best. Bye-bye. Take care. I will see you tomorrow with a fresh topic, with a small topic basically explained in a short duration of time. All the very best. Bye-bye.